Friends, family, fans, welcome back to another episode of Back Nine Bets, episode 147, Royal Portrussian Roulette, which I believe is what Ben Coley was playing in the lobby of the StreamYard situation, yeah, and didn't work out. The bullet came through there, Mr. Harrop, so we've sliced one of the guys from the Slice podcast out of the show, and now we've just got the other half. So, Mr. Harrop, how are you on this fine morning here on Tuesday in Central Iowa and wherever I may find you?
I'm just sorry, Byron, that you've ended up with the worst half of the Sliced duo, but yeah, no, I'm doing well. I'm down in Dorset on the south coast of UK, so it's a nice part of the world, but yeah, I know it's an early start for you, so this is no, it's an honor to be on the show.
Why, thank you. It's honored to have you. And you get these shitty gimmicky gifts.
Yeah.
The golf mug. This is like the one and only opportunity I've had to really. I just need to find the putter that I putt through the hole over here. So, cheers to whoever bought me this for Christmas.
That's better than the one I've got. I've got one where it's literally shaped like a golf ball, so you can't physically drink out of it without it all just spilling down your chin. It's quite special.
The gifts you get are just incredible. Caitlin was showing me a TikTok video of someone strapping, those baby firecracker pop guns. Those.
Oh yeah.
You just scotch tape it to the back of your golf ball, so when no one's paying attention, you just tee that bad boy up and just light the golf course on fire, basically. And she's like, "This would be such a good idea." It's yeah, no one's gonna see me hitting a golf ball that's got a giant red piece of firecracker taped to the back of it, but it's the world out there. The world out there. Alrighty, so we're in Ireland, Royal Portrush, and it's so nice to go back to the Open Championship every year because, as most people that know that listen to the show, 12 of the last 12 Open Championship winners had finished first or second in a major before that. So it is the most pedigreed of the bunch because the Masters is next, and then we've seen the US Open, Sam, JJ Spaun, Wyndham Clark, that is where the unsolidified up-and-comers tend to find their first majors at the US Open. So this week at the Open Championship, we've got just pure class. Is there any reason why you think that's the case, or your thoughts on Open Championship play in general?
I think it's just with the Open, right? It demands people will say this about the US Open too, and it's not incorrect either. But the Open sort of demands the full spectrum of shots, right? Absolutely everything, and you really can't fake it, And yes, you could apply that to a certain extent to someone like Oakmont as well. But I think with the Open, there's just something different about the kind of the range of shots, especially when you're dealing with you got your tight lies rather than your kind of 6-inch rough or whatever. It just brings out a different level. I think you see a different level cut in. So
yeah, I think there's a different level of, like you mentioned, the bags. You need every shot in the bag, because you're going to be in thick rough, some wispy rough, not the rough you used to in the States. And I think the level of patience that you require when it comes to links golf is what a lot of people chat about Scotty Scheffler with, is that level of variability that is almost unfair to the world's best golfer in the, how can that ball bounce 15 yards further than I thought? This is not how it works. So why is this the case? So we've seen this with Scotty, still looking for his first top 5 in an Open Championship, Sam. So I'm curious as to, have you got any takes on why Scotty Scheffler's had limited success, so to speak, relative to the rest of his major career?
Oh, I think you've just nailed it there, to be honest. I think it's the fact that there is a certain inherent unfairness with an Open, right? You will get bad bounces. You will probably end up in some pretty nasty stuff without really hitting that bad a shot. And he's I guess he's just not used to that happening on the usual setups that he's playing, right? So as soon as you add the more variance you add in, the less likely Scheffler is to win. He's still very likely to win because he's the best golfer on the planet. But the more you add in those kind of the variance that an Open brings, I think his odds just get that little bit reduced, enough to make it enough to make me not play him this week, I would say.
Yes, I think this week and last week were the 2 weeks prior to hand injury where I've felt, and this is obviously the worst way to feel, okay, leaving him off the card, but you're Scotty Scheffler, you never know what he's capable of. And he just had a presser this morning where he went on for 5 minutes speaking about the pursuits of happiness and how they intermingle with the game of golf.
Yeah,
You got to go and see this video. It's like he just
amazing.
took a massive rip of a pot and just went into this deep, mellow, like, this isn't what I seek joy in life. It's what I do. And it's just like so wholesome. And it makes sense why he can just like compartmentalize so well, right? Because he's actually still working. Whereas a lot of people that make it to the PJ level, they're living their dream, which he's still doing, but his dream is more so now wholehearted off the course with the family and things like that. So it was really interesting to see Scotty go deep into the weeds there in the presser. So
it was a proper existential sort of, sort of Terry one, wasn't it? And he sort of ended up saying, ultimately, I just look at these weeks and I think, well, what's the point? I'll win. It's great for a few minutes, and then I'm just, what's the point of it all? It's great.
He's like, I could win 2 majors. You guys would ask me if I'm going to win the FedEx Cup, and it's just, it is very true. You don't have
makes sense,
a lot of,
right?
Yeah, like Super Bowl teams, English Premier League teams, they win the league, they win Super Bowl parades, massive parties, like weeks and weeks long of celebrations. No, Scotty Scheffler's teeing that bad boy up the following week at the Travelers. Like it's relentless for these guys. And, the off season's too late to really remember what they did once it arrives. So speaking of remembering, Sam, where and what in the last couple of years has been your favorite major? Obviously mine with Louis, showing up in 2010, the same year as the World Cup in South Africa. So that was very special. Obviously, anytime Ernie won was always fun, especially when an Australian like Adam Scott gave it away to Ernie down the stretch. But curious as to what kind of Open Championships stick out to you, and if I'm assuming this is your favorite one of them all, since you are from that continent.
Well, I don't like to say this, especially on this show, Byron, but my favorite is actually the Masters, and it has been for my whole golf watching life. But the Open is not far behind, I will say.
Yeah, that is not a problem, Sam. It's the best golf tournament on the planet.
Okay,
there's no
good.
doubt about it.
Good, kindred spirits. Yeah, no. In terms of the Open, though, there's been some great ones on there. I was talking to Ben about this yesterday on our podcast, but I really liked 2013 at Muirfield. Where Mickelson won. Growing up, Mickelson was my favorite golfer, being sort of left-hander myself. He was the one guy, as a sort of 10-year-old, I was like, oh, he looks like me. He plays from the same side of the ball that I do. Like hardly anyone did really. Much more so now. But back then there was kind of him and Mike Weir and maybe a couple of others. But now it's much more prevalent, especially in the top, the sort of top tier in world golf. And that was a good. I really like Muirfield as a venue as well. I think it's my favorite Open venue. And then coming down, to the final round, Lee Westwood, obviously fellow Englishman, had the 54-hole lead. You had Tiger Woods was just a few behind. There was some good players in the mix. That it could have gone, one of many ways. And then it was got this cool duel at the end with Mickelson and Stenson. And that was probably my favorite in recent years, I would say. I probably didn't watch, like really as a really young kid, I didn't watch a ton of golf. Probably only really when I turned maybe sort of 18, I reckon I started really sort of following golf.
Oh, really? Wow. That's, but you were playing the piano, doing more important things, finding the pursuit of happiness in other realms of the world. Scotty would be proud of you. How did that ever land up happening, Sam? I'm sure that you've been asked this a couple times, but how did the merger of like golf parody? I commend you. Like to put something out like that. It's we chatted about one song. After Scotty won the Masters again, you didn't feel like that was the moment to release something for Scotty because or Rory. Sorry, Rory. That was who you were chatting.
Rory, yeah. I think with Rory, it was I didn't. It felt like too big a moment, almost like a sort of song wouldn't have done it justice. I think like it would just yeah, you used a good word actually at the time. I can't remember what it was. You said like chintzy or something. Whatever it was like it was. You used a good word to describe it. It didn't quite feel right. But the way it started really is that I kind of I'm sort of a musician, I suppose, by trade. I mean, it's not my full-time job, but that's that's my main hobby, I guess. And I always kind of had a creative outlet for my music. So for a long time, I technically am still a member of a cappella group in London, right? So we were rehearsing every week. We had concerts, we had gigs, we had stuff going on. And then when COVID hit, suddenly that was all gone, right? Because no one was singing during COVID. That was like the worst possible thing you could do, right? So, I went through basically, a good period of not seeing those people, not singing, not really having that kind of outlet. And obviously, I follow golf, all the time. So I just sort of thought, I'm sitting at home, I feel like I need to do something with my music. What can I do that other people haven't done? I haven't really seen any other people do songs about golf or golfers anyway. So I just put that one out about Tony Finau, and it kind of blew up. And it wasn't really, I didn't think it was going to be a long-term thing. It was just, I was going to do this for a bit of fun and just, put it up there, and people hate it, fine. If they like it, great. I didn't really sort of have a plan. I'm going to do this as a thing for the next 5 years. But yeah.
That's awesome though. Like it's so cool when you do something that you find joy in that brings more joy to other people and is not a viable, I don't know how, viable of a career, writing songs is like that, but it's still a fantastic hobby, to have that, you can really, really enjoy. And it's so fun when you drop, new songs every time, because you just never know what the song's going to be and who the player is going to be. I feel like trying to match them up it's a perfect storm, right? So which one has been your favorite so far that you've written?
Probably the one I did about Victor Dubuisson. That was an early one. It just kind of married up the song choice and the golfer just worked really well. And for some reason, I've just had these lines that came to me that I thought, that's a really good line, and it just fell in place very nicely, that one, and people seem to love it. And I think the more enigmatic or the more kind of charismatic the player in question kind of makes it makes them a better subject. So yeah.
That's very, very true. And, got a great name as well that you can just throw into a song.
Exactly.
Awesome stuff. All right, let's get to some actual chatting about what's going on this week. As always, you can find everything that you're looking for from the placement markets, from outrights at Play Profit X. Use code FG Degenerates to get yourself 1.5% back on your first 30 days of plays. They're up to $200. We'll be picking a couple picks over there later on in the show. This is going to be the part of the show where we do back or nine, Sam. We are on back nine bets. And as you are from the European side of things there, you know what nine means in German. But to those of you that don't, we are going to be doing back, say yes to this name, or nine, say no in German to that name, or the letter nine, number 9 on back nine bets, whatever. We've got a couple fun names. I'm going to pull up the model, kind of show people what's going on as we're rolling through. Let's go right off the top rope here, Sam. Rory or Rahm, if you were to back one and say 9 to the other, we can call it heads up. I don't know if you want to associate odds with it or not. I felt like I'm pretty good at picking the names. They put people in a pretzel pretty quickly.
This is a really good one. Yeah, really good one. Okay, I'm going to go back Rahm, 9 Rory.
Okay.
I mean,
it's a reason for give me a reason.
Yeah, it could honestly. It's a very hard one because Rahm I really like this week. There's so many positives. He loves links golf. He's got good pedigree in this sort of tournament. He feels the way he's played in the majors this year. Obviously, is eye catching, and he feels like at some point in his career he will win an Open Championship. So those are the big pros for me. And he's been playing well. Generally, obviously played well last week in Valderrama. So all those things are pros. The only negative, really, in my mind, is the fact that I'm not sure the Valderrama is a brilliant prep for this week. We talked about it a little bit yesterday on my show with Ben, but yeah, I do have slight question marks about that. And if you look at last year's Open and how the players who played Valderrama the week before fared, it wasn't very well. Rahm was the best, and he never really contended. He was kind of just floating, just below the contenders. But yeah, I really like him. Rory's just I don't know. I feel like with Rory, and this feels like a weird thing to say, having just won the Masters under probably the ultimate pressure. But it does feel to me like the more eyes that are on him, and there's always eyes on Rory, of course, but being the kind of home open and stuff, it's almost too much of under the microscope. But that's just a kind of hunch. That's not really based on it. There's so many pros for Rory this week as well. So.
Yeah, finding reasons to bet to like 9 a golfer of either of their caliber is hard, which is the point of the show, is to kind of just, if you have to make a hard decision, I'm hoping the guests can help us kind of verify that, and also support my argument for Jon Rahm to win this tournament at 14-1. I bet him with the 5 places as well, and a top 10 too, at plus 130. Play ProfitX, I've got a plus 150 out there, hoping to get matched. So just taking a look at Rahm's couple last Open championships, Sam, he's been in stellar form ever since Portrush. He missed, played quite poorly for Rahm standards at St. Andrews, which arguably is the least linksy of all venues that we've played, at the Open Championship in a while, right? It was more birdie festy, just drive it. If Cam Smith is driving the ball well around a golf course, either he's found a revelation in his life that none of us would ever think could happen, or it's a very forgiving golf course off the tee, right?
Yeah, that's a well surmised, and I think you're right. St. Andrews, particularly that year, and probably when Louis won, to be fair, were playing probably not particularly linksy in sort of open standards, right? They were, there wasn't a ton of wind. They were more birdie festy than normal, like you say, and yeah, you can forgive that. You can forgive him not doing brilliantly that week.
Yeah, and I mean, outside of that, we've got an 11th, a 3rd, a 2nd, and a 7th. He's been his floor for a very variable type of event. We're just looking at the top of the board here, and there's not a lot of repeated colors every single year for these guys. The consistency of finding yourself inside the top 10 or so of the Open Championship is super, super tricky. And Rahm in majors just seems to really bring that next level of safety. Am I concerned about him getting across the line in a massive situation? Yes. I think he's lost his those knives you see late at night, the sharpest knives in the world. Like Rahm used to be one of those Japanese $250 kitchen knives. And now, since becoming worth more, the knife has got blunt, at the sharpest point. And I'm concerned about that. So any concerns for you in the same department?
It's so hard to say, isn't it? Because we don't see him in those situations often enough to really be able to judge it, right? We see someone like Tommy Fleetwood in those situations all the time, so we feel like we can say, you know what, he struggles under the gun, right? I don't think that's unfair to say, at least in the stateside. But someone like Rahm, you could say certainly at Quail Hollow, there was a moment where you felt like, oh, okay, he could win this thing, and then he just kind of fell off just at that exact point.
Yeah.
But because that's just sort of one, isolated incident, it feels like it's sort of, there's not a big enough sample size to really say, okay, he's lost that cutting edge. But I don't know. It wouldn't put me off. I'm not personally put off by that.
Okay, perfect. I'm very happy with that answer. And as a result, we'll move on to the next one, which I put out a post on Twitter and I said, Jay Rose should be priced shorter than Jay Thomas at the Open Championship. And I firmly believe that. So are you backing or nining Justin Thomas or Justin Rose in this dilemma we have?
I feel much more comfortable in this one, Byron. I am backing Justin Rose and I'm nining Justin Thomas.
What's the reasoning for either?
Well, Rose, I mean, I've had, transparently, I've had a bet on Rose already this week because Beautiful. I think it's one of these tricky ones. With the Open, you always seem to get a vet. I mean, last year was Rose, right? But you quite often get a veteran, normally Brit or an Irishman. You get a veteran who's up there who just kind of plays this really sort of steady game, manages the conditions really well, doesn't get flustered. And Justin Rose is kind of the epitome of that. And he's been playing some decent golf lately. He doesn't come in with the same, or almost, well, I don't know. Last year you can look at it either way. You can say, okay, he wasn't in his best of form. He had to actually qualify, via final qualifying. This year he doesn't have to do that because he's been playing better. He comes off the back of obviously, the nearly winning the Masters, which is a much harder thing to do at his age with his tools than it is to contend in an Open, right? So yeah, there's a lot of plus points to him. Justin Thomas, for me, he's an artist, right? Extremely creative player, fantastic short game. There's a lot to like about him in an Open, but again, it doesn't. If you were to put a gun to my head and say, does Justin Thomas win an Open in his career? I'd say no. I'd say 9. Sorry.
I would say, does Justin Thomas ever finish top 20 in an Open or top 10? I think his best ever finish, I think, in Open Championship was here at Portrush in 2019. I don't think he's got a top 10 in an Open Championship because I actually should know this because I have the guys color-coded. If you have a gray box over here, you have finished second in a major since 2021. And since 2018, you finished inside the top 10 in an Open Championship. I think 11 of the last 14 Open champions have finished top 10 in an Open Championship prior. Cam Smith had a 20th, Collin Morikawa was a debut, and Louis had missed the cut leading up to that every single time. So those are the only 3 instances where it wasn't predictive of a top 10. And JT doesn't have that. And he's super, super bad in majors, actually. For the pedigree and the way we speak about Justin Thomas, it's actually very perplexing to see him in 19 major starts. He's missed 8 cuts, and some of them have been epic. Like at LACC when he was trying not to shoot an 80. The guy, I think he landed up shooting an 80. Was that Memorial or a major? I can't remember.
I can't remember, but yeah, I mean, there's been some shocking ones, haven't there? And I think it's telling, really, that his major wins have come on PGA Championships, right? What a lot of people would say is just a slightly harder PGA Tour event, So,
amen. Yeah, and from significantly back too. He didn't ever front run it. He came chasing down Mito Pereira. Like if Mito just keeps his left shoulder a little lower for a little longer, like that ball isn't fading nearly as much as it should. If he just hits a 3-wood, Justin Thomas is not a 2-time PGA champion, and I think that's very telling of who he is. I'll go with Justin Rose. We've got 2 second places here in the last couple years since 2021. One of them being this year, freaking against Rory. I mean, that must have been quite the paradox for you guys across the pond there for old Rosie to try and get a green. But I feel like Rory, I think everyone was still rooting for him too. But this is the year, this is the week for Rosie to get his redemption. It would be a fantastic career arc or, storybook ending for him to lose in such heartbreaking fashion to everyone's hero.
Yeah.
Where no one really was rooting for him except for me because I had a ticket on him at the Masters. But I think this is the time. He's fantastic in Open Championships. He's one of the best major putters, Sam. When you speak about that wily old veteran experience, guys that just know how to get the ball in the hole when it matters, and Rosie's one of them, right? When it comes to majors, and I think it'll be really fun to watch him. His price is very fair, in DraftKings wise, he's super cheap. 80-1 was out there a couple days ago. It's now 75s at some places, 60s. Still would go there at 60. I think he's a very live option to me, and I'm looking forward to him this week.
And one more thing, Byron, his ball striking last week was really good. He was top 5 in tee to green, in obviously a very strong field, on a similar type of test. I know the conditions will be a little bit different this week, but again, if anyone can handle those kind of, if it looks like there's going to be a fair amount of rain this week, he doesn't mind that at all, right? He grew up in that those sort of conditions. So he's going to cope well with that. Almost in a way, the worse the weather, the better he'll do. So
mental toughness, the mental umbrella, so to speak, I think is exactly where Justin Rose thrives. And I think we probably would have seen 100-1 if he didn't play well at the Scottish once the odds markets recalibrated. I'm actually happier to have a shorter number on him, knowing that he's clicked into gear slightly before the week of. I was pretty certain he would show up to some capacity this week because, this tournament probably means the most to him. And it would be really cool for him to win it. And I think just seeing like that ball striking entering the week and just some good form. It's not like a win or second, he's just under the radar playing very, very nicely at the perfect time. So I'm excited for Rosie. South African born, by the way. So we'll see what he can get up to. All right. So next up, we've got J or JJ. So we've got J Day or JJ Spaun coming up here for the back or 9 part of this show. Sam, JJ Spaun or Jason Day for you?
Yeah, God, this is a tough one. I'm gonna go back Jason Day and 9 JJ Spaun, and the reason is when I was researching yesterday, Jason Day was ticking a lot of boxes, I got to say, and the only thing really that put me off him was the fact that he missed the cut here in 2019. I think that is a concern. Don't get me wrong, and I haven't backed him for that reason. Really, that's too much of a question mark. JJ Spaun, without looking up his results right now, I don't know what's his open record. Can you tell me? I feel like he probably.
I think it's a debut.
Is his debut? Is it right? Okay, yeah. Wow. Well, in that case, yeah.
Best open finishes there. Nothing.
I think unless you're coming in with really strong links credentials, and I'll say, Bob McIntyre, for example, it was his debut in 2019, and he finished tied 6th, right? But he's got someone who's coming from a links background, okay? Mm-hmm. So you can it doesn't matter really that he hasn't played an Open before. Someone like JJ Spaun playing an Open for the first time, that's a big question mark. You have no idea how he's going to take to that type of test. My heart would say actually he could perform better than a lot of Americans on their debut in this type of event because of the way he hits the ball. But I would probably be avoiding him for this one.
Yeah, I think he's obviously playing great, JJ Spaun, and if there is a US Open that could be as close to linksy as possible, I would say Oakmont, with the firmness of the fairways, but we never really got the linksiest version of Oakmont, although the rough it's not necessarily anywhere near close to what we'll experience this week. So, congrats to him. A debut appearance as an American in the Open Championship is not what you're looking for. He's priced accordingly. Everything makes a lot of sense, but I'm going to be leaning into Jason Day, Sam, with a 90-1 over there with the 5 places. I'm not going to put as much stock into his performance here. A couple years ago, it would be nice if he did play well here, but we've seen better performances from him in other Open Championships as well. If we take a peek at J Day's situation, we've got since then we've had a 2nd and a 13th, in the last 2 Open Championships for Jason Day. So yeah. It's trending. He's had a couple good starts as well this year. T4 at Travelers, T8 at the Masters. He's starting some form in the bigger tournaments, and he's also one of these guys that's lost a step when it comes to distance and the power that he used to have to save his back. And this is the week where he can really thrive, because he's just keeping the ball in front of him, going to be relying on the short game that he is world class at, and I think if it's wet and rainy and windy, then we're going to see some solid up and downs from Jason Day. And those Malbon rain suits are better than any rain suits out there, Sam. So he should be staying the driest of them all.
Well, here's a question for you, Byron. The only thing, this isn't something that I've strongly considered, but you've just made me think about it now. With his sort of back issues that he's had, which I'm sure are still there lingering somewhere, right? Does bad weather, would bad weather put you off Jason Day in terms of, kind of rain and potentially colder than average conditions?
I don't think so, because if I remember correctly, wasn't Royal Liverpool, that was 2 years ago, right? That was a trudge fest. They were just going. It was
that's fair.
Soaky, soppy. When he finished 2nd there, I think he really, I think I remember from Tom Kim, the Netflix, docuseries there on Tom with the basically playing on a bum ankle in the cold. That made me really realize, wow, Tom's got some grit. He's got a bit of dog in him, although he does look like a nice British Bulldog puppy, just doing his thing. But I think J Day, these guys are competitors at the end of the day. And when it becomes a mental test, I think Jason's actually got that. So that's probably what he relies on more now than he does his actual physical attributes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
You might have sold me on Jason Day, Byron.
Yeah. This was a bit more of a layup type situation, a little transition. I like the wordplay with JJ and Jay, so we had to go there. This is like a British one for you, but it's not necessarily that British. Tom or Harry? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry. Yeah, we're gonna rock and roll with Tom or Harry. Tom Kim or Harry Hall for you. Back.
I like that. I like that. You know what, I'm really, we actually talked about this, didn't we, Byron, on Twitter last week. I'm really high on Harry Hall generally. I think he's really underrated golfer. I think he's on an upward trajectory. So and obviously he loves links golf. Again, he grew up in Cornwall, not too far from me, just a bit further down the coast. He would have played plenty of links golf down there on the south coast. I love the fact that he came through final qualifying for this, like Rose last year. And he was medalist as well in his qualifying, having just flown over from Detroit. That was impressive in itself. I really like him. Tom Kim is kind of hard to get a real handle on lately. He's had all these caddy changes. He's had, his form has been really up and down. We know that he can win when he's kind of in the hunt. But there's just a few too many questions. It doesn't feel like he's quite kind of settled at the moment. You know what I mean? It's not like he doesn't feel comfortable to me, and I think I'd need that to choose him over Harry Hall.
Couldn't agree more on the two options. I think Harry's probably cheaper than Tom. I haven't checked this, looking at their DraftKings price, they're probably very similar in odds. But sadly, I am in on Tom Kim at what seems to be 1,400 to 1. Little typo there. It's only 140 to 1. People don't get too carried away. Typed this like while I climb out of bed this morning. Anyway, Tom Kim. Second at Liverpool, like we just spoken about. And I do think Portrussia, I just don't know. I felt like he went to Cam Young and like eroded Cam Young's confidence away from him and then left. He's like those bugs, that just eat the wood from the inside out kind of thing, in my opinion. This is obviously a very brash take, and it's founded on very little. But it just seems that he's too serious and too for Tom, needs a bit more jovialness in his life, and maybe just having a friend on the bag, like we saw with who was it, Collin and his buddy balling out, doing their thing. I think a little bit of a renewed zest in life, for Tom, because the weirdest thing is I do the showdown stuff. You can grab that in the Model Maniac Patreon, by the way. People use Port50 for 50% off your first month. But when doing showdown stuff, I've noticed that Tom Kim, he's had a really poor year. If you actually take a look at his overall year for the last 12 months, he's losing strokes, to the field. And he's actually gaining strokes repeatedly on Fridays. If you've got that in your bag and you're constantly gaining strokes on a specific day, your game is mental. You don't swing better on a Thursday compared to a Friday. Now, you wake up differently on a Friday versus a Thursday because you know that the cut's coming up, or you've played one round already, or whatever it is. Tom Kim needs to figure out how to get Fridays onto Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. So it's really interesting to notice that, and that kind of gives me a little bit of a hope that it's more of a mindset thing than an actual physical swing deficiency that he's trying to find. So maybe the new caddy can kind of just get him across the line. He's also loved, playing in Open Championships and majors in general in his short career.
Has it been confirmed who his new caddy is yet?
No idea where the new caddy is.
No. He needs I'll tell you what, he needs Gino Benali on the bag, right?
Oh my God. That would be blockbuster, actually.
Yeah. I think that'd be a good team.
I think so too. Because Gino's goofy enough to deal with Tom Kim's goofiness, and also knows how to keep you in line. I think. What's your take on that breakup, by the way?
I was really shocked to read that this morning. I mean, just because obviously they've kind of grown up together, childhood friends, right? They've been caddy. He's been caddy for Joel for 10 years. That's a long time. That's as long as a lot of marriages, right? It's just a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess probably what's happened. I know I'm just speculating, but maybe Joel hasn't had great results this year. He's had bad. Maybe he's got to point. You know what, Gino? You deserve better than me. Go off and
Yeah.
find someone else. I don't know. I could be wrong here, but it feels like it feels like it's more likely to be Joel saying, you know what, maybe this is for your good. That you go elsewhere, rather than Joel saying you're fired. I don't see that happening. But yeah,
I think
it was definitely a shocker.
yeah.
And hopefully it works out. Hopefully it works out well for both of them, because Joel's probably one of my favorite players in the world of golf, I would say. And I really hope that he can rally over the next few months and keep his card again, because he's not looking in great shape at the moment. And yeah, and hopefully Gino can find a good bag. Maybe Tom Kim.
That would be awesome. I think he did take a page out of Max Homer's book as well, with him and Joe. Where the friendship is more than the stuff that they're dealing with on the course. That can be a little frustrating, especially when you're crossing boundaries to get the guy to do something that could potentially like ruin a relationship. That makes a lot of sense. Like Scotty Scheffler said this morning in 5 minutes worth of sermon there, it was just, golf is not the game that we ultimately trying to win while we're on this planet. It's the game of life that ultimately is the situation there. But getting back to Tom Kim, like I just pulled up the Tom Kim situation. You can see round 2's numbers. It's the only one that's like really close to being good. And it's 1.2 strokes that he's gaining on average in the 16 rounds. If we go 2024, it's still one of his better 40 rounds. He's gaining a casual 1 stroke, in round 2. So it's like, it's sad to see like how the chart goes this way as it gets to round 3 and round 4 when it matters most. Like that just seems to me like it's like a mental breakdown. So 140 to 1. That's the reason why we're going there. Let's dive into Sepp or Fitz. No real name player, just 2 solid options heading into the Open Championship this week. Fitzy looking for his first finish better than 20th in an Open Championship, Sam.
It's a curious one, isn't it?
Place. Yeah.
It's a curious one.
How are we dealing with this?
Well, I'm going to say back Fitz and 9 to Sepp, which, doesn't give me joy in doing so, because Sepp has got my favorite golf swing on the planet, I think. But I can't forgive him for what happened at Oakmont, where I was so confident he was going to do well, and he was so bad that I can't bring myself to give him a chance this week, which he does have a chance. Let's be honest. Fitzpatrick, actually, I was talking about a few weeks ago, not sort of say a crow of, I said this was going to happen, but he was definitely starting to play good golf, and I said, he's turned a corner. We're going to see some good results from him soon, and obviously he was very good last week. And I reckon he could get his best open finish to date this week. I don't think that I don't know if I see him necessarily really properly contending to win, but I can see him getting a top 20. Yeah. So I'm leaning Fit.
That was what he finished when he was here in 2019. He's been close. And you'd think, when did he start getting all juiced up, right? It was probably 2020 when he won the US Open.
Around then. Yeah, 2001,
2022. Yeah, 2021-ish. So, leading up to that, links golf probably suited his game a little better with how precise he was and methodical, plotting his way around the course versus just Brookline bombing it out there.
Yeah.
I wonder, when you're proud about being from a place, and sometimes that can be inspiring and motivating, and then sometimes it can just be a little overwhelming, like why has this person never played J Day? Like he's never played well, I think, at Murfield, where he's a member or lives close by, or doesn't make sense sometimes. And maybe it's just the logistics of, I think Kenny always mentions, how many tickets people are begging you for when it's a home tournament and things like, it's just too much crap going on the side of the course there. So
yeah,
he is arguably playing some of the best golf, at least on a short-term basis, is Fitzy. I mean, he's come in hot, and ball striking the absolute bejesus out of it, especially at the Rocket when I think he led the field in ball striking on tee to green and just could not figure out how to get a putt in the hole. And I'm looking for someplace, maybe soon, we'll have a stat where you can see, okay, strokes gained putting over birdie putts versus par putts.
Yes, that would be good, wouldn't it? That would be really interesting to see. Yeah.
I think Fitz would have some massive contrasting situations, and Bez. Those are like the two people that show up to me first. Is like, who would you put your life on the line for? Like, it's Bezzy and Fitzy over a 12-foot par putt, but give me Cam Smith from 15 feet for birdie instead. You know, like that's kind of how I'm kind of viewing it. So Fitzy in a more like passive scoring environment, I think thrives a little better anyway. I am hyping him up a lot, even though I am going with Sepp at 55-1, where I feel like it's a very fair number. He's won twice this year. Now, am I reeling from the fact that he hasn't made a cut in a major this year? Yes, massive problem. Masters, I expected him to make the cut, but that he's not even a debut. Finished 16th last year. But the other two are a little too big of a ballpark for Sepp Straka, where he's not going to be hitting a 300 plus out there. He's not the greatest.
I disagree, Byron. I'm going to disagree. Only because JJ Spaun. I haven't got the stats to hand, but I would say that their driving distance is very similar.
Yes. Okay. What got JJ? He ball struck it beautifully too, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
wasn't all putter.
Well, what they both do very well, I think, is they both hit it far enough, but they're both more accurate than most. And I think that was the real combo that I think worked well at Oakmont. But for whatever reason, it must have just eluded Sepp that one.
For whatever reason. It blows my mind to have won twice but had more miscuts in majors. When you almost have more wins than miscuts, it's a problem. But I respect that you came out the gate saying, I was trying to like soften Sepp up a little bit. You are very, very right saying that JJ and Sepp, I think they're very similar in stature, in their game in general. I don't know how good, like I can't remember if JJ's like short game is bulletproof, but that is my issue with Sepp, is hoping the softer conditions, I didn't see the wind being that significant. And also, by the way, I took a quick sneak peek here. This is the weather. Let me pull it up actually on a screenshot because it's a little easier to manipulate. I don't have the screen. There we go. We're taking a look at the weather here quickly. Whenever I pull this side up, it like freezes my entire computer. Okay, there we go. So we got Thursday over here. It's going to be pretty much windy and rainy for most of the day. And then Friday looks like the afternoon could be prime scoring conditions over here. We're not seeing any wind, hardly any wind. It's going to be nice and soft after a full day's worth of rain. I'm not dropping any placement, picks on the show because I'm waiting for tee times to come out. And I think this PM wave on Friday, so the AM on Thursday, PM on Friday, is seeming. And I love how we go from Sam, you decide I'm going to be a golf handicapper. I love betting on golf. I love watching the game of golf. Then you start taking this seriously, and then you become a meteorologist all of a sudden, an expert meteorologist. And I get the weather wrong so often, and I often know what's happening in Portrush more than I do what's happening in my own hometown weather-wise, because that's just who we are. But
and there's nowhere worse to try and predict the weather than Ireland as well.
I know. But we are looking at weather reports like 3 days out. So
we'll
see what happens. I prefer it to be that way for Sepp. I think the easier the scoring, the better, the less chipping he has to do, the more birdie looks he has. That's, it's exponentially impactful on his game. The more green regulations versus not is what we can really hope for from Sepp. So we'll see what can happen. Shane got to what? -13, around that ballpark area. So I think, he can pull something out the fire for us. I'm hopeful for him. Can't say I'm super confident in Sepp Straka, but the chance that he just shows up, he checks the two boxes, second at Royal Liverpool 2 years ago is kind of what I'm going off of, the magic Magic second and top 10 in a major open.
The last note I'll say on Fitzpatrick, by the way, is the fact that if you look at these results and you kind of think, okay, well, maybe he's just not a great links player, then I would say, remember that he did win the Dunhill Links a few years ago. So, it's a different time of year, but, he does like links golf. Don't be put off by kind of the fact that he's 20th is his best finish in it.
Was he playing with his mom that day?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. Yeah, he was, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like, he's a very family-orientated guy, so you never know how that goes. Yeah, I don't think it's a links problem. I think it's an Open Championship problem.
Yeah.
If it's, so far. So if they played Augusta or if Brookline was in the heart of Ireland, I think you'd still have struggled, given what he's done in the past. But that's neither here nor there. So that's going to be it for me from the betting side of things. So now we can just chat some fun hypotheticals for the rest of the way here, Sam. Shane Lowry, defending champ of Portrush, and Collin Morikawa. Two options that I think are going to be difficult to differentiate here in the back or nine part of the show. Were you backing? Were you nine?
Easiest one yet, Byron. Easiest one yet. Back, Shane, 9, Kawa. I said this. I said this on Slice last week before the Scottish Open. I think that Morikawa and Billy Foster is a terrible partnership. Genuinely terrible.
Okay.
I think they couldn't be worse suited in my mind. And I'm prepared to take the risk that I might look stupid if Morikawa plays well this week. But I just don't think that they're the right match at all. And you combine that with the fact that, I just think Morikawa to me feels like he needs like a kind of a yes man type caddy. Billy Foster is going to tell it to you straight. He's not going to take any shit, and he's not going to take anything lying down, and he's going to. I just think he's going to rattle Morikawa's cage in a bad way. So yeah, that's why. And also there's a few other things. Morikawa, his putting is a concern. Too much of a concern, I think, to be contending to win a major at the moment. And people may say, okay, well he's won an Open Championship before. Yes, he has, but you look at the conditions that week. It almost wasn't an Open in many ways.
It was St. Andrewsy, right?
Yeah. So I'm not high at all on Morikawa. Shane, I think there's a lot of pressure on Shane this week, just based on the fact that he's obviously, sort of defending champion in a way. But he loves the golf course, and I think once he's sort of, I can see it maybe affecting him in the first round. That kind of maybe that kind of that pressure from being the local boy and everything. And then I can see maybe he'll shoot like a 72 or 73 in the first round. But then after that, once he's kind of shaken that off, he'll rally a bit and he'll finish in the top 10, something like that.
Yeah, I can see that happening because it just seems like Shane's mentals have been very shaky the last couple of weeks. We saw it at Oakmont. We saw he lost his marbles at Quail and at Oakmont. I haven't seen him swing. If he could swing at a golf ball like he does at Divot, the guy would be hit in like a 180 ball speed. Easy. He just needs to change the mindset because he's got that explosiveness in him. I mean, that swing at the Divot at Quail was ferocious. And then everything that he did at Oakmont was like, what a roller coaster round that was, to shoot. I think he shot close to 80 that day and had a holdout eagle in the same round.
That wasn't it. Yeah.
And throwing microphones, like he got into his caddy in a big way. Like the caddy could not come up with the right number. I would be petrified to be giving Shane numbers in that state of mind. So I didn't make up my own mind on this question. I think I'm going to go with Kawa just because, and if I could, I would 9 both of these dudes because there's just so much going on for both of them. But I think Collin just, in a DFS world, I'm not betting either of them. Collin is slightly cheaper, but now it's so funny to see an Open champion miss 2 consecutive cuts in defense. Like that was gross.
That says a lot, right? I think.
Yeah, it does. It says so much about who he is. And I think you could not have wished for a better, like to try and get the slam. he's never going to win another Open Championship ever, or even come close, in my opinion, Collin. You know, that was his golden egg, and he just he hatched that bad boy at the perfect time. So he just needs to win 2 more now, and then we'll see what he can do. But he's got the mental juju's going on. Shane's got them too. If I were to go with one of them, I'd go with Collin, just because, you know, I have to pick one, really. Can't say I'm thrilled about either. How about these two? Ludvig Aberg or Joaquin Niemann going into this week? Niemann, horrible track record at the Open, phenomenal form on Live, horrible track record in majors in general. Ludvig also, you know, majors that rely a bit more on around the green play. You know, he's lacking in that department and has been a little inconsistent lately. You know, his Saturdays for Ludvig have been quite bad. So curious as where you backing and nining, Ludvig or Niemann?
I don't love either, if I'm honest. I'd probably I'm probably saying back Ludvig and 9 Niemann. Purely just on their major records, really. Not that Ludvig's is amazing outside the Masters, but it just feels like he's more likely of the two. If you were to present both options, say, right, which one is more likely to win a major in their career, then I'm definitely going Ludvig. Okay, so I'm almost reducing it to that level of sort of just binary, because I think there's sort of there are question marks. Ludvig has kind of been a bit hard to get a handle on lately because he's obviously a phenomenal player, right? His ball striking is brilliant, but he just seems to keep throwing in these mistakes in rounds. You know, there's just these double bogeys that seem to like kind of come out of nowhere. So he's hard. It's been hard to get a grasp on. Last week he started really well, didn't he? In Scotland, he was right up there within first front 9, I think. And he thought, this could be a Ludvig week, and he just sort of petered out, didn't he? And then Niemann just hasn't really flown in the majors as yet, and maybe it'll happen at some point. But where was he? He was okay at Quail Hollow, wasn't he? In the end, I can't remember where he finished.
Waco had a T8 at Quail, which was one of the most backdoory. Like he didn't even enter the back door; he was in the building, and then they built the walls around him with the door in the walls. Like he didn't even come through it. It was just he was just there when the walls were put in, because
amazing.
He was like T17 when he finished his round, and then all of a sudden he was T8 when it ended. So I understand, the course got a little difficult, but props to him. Shout out to John Rahm on just ejecting to give him a T8 versus a T9, blah, 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 all of that. But interesting note on Ludvig this year. As you can see here, round 4, he's just been going bananas. He's gaining 1.7 strokes in those 10 rounds. Round 3, he's losing 1.8. So he's bouncing back pretty well after a bad Saturday. And it just seems like he's just not finding his groove again. This is all you just mentioned, Sam, that he's got these trios of holes that he just kind of completely butchers. He played 3 holes, 5 over par on Saturday at the Genesis Scottish Open. He would have been right in the mix if he just eliminated those 3 holes from his tournament. And it's mental again, and I think this is the thing. He's obviously ultra talented from a swing perspective. Fundamentally that swing is just made of syrup and silk, and it's really nice to watch him play golf. But he gets a little jumpy in the moment at times, and I think he's missed more cuts in majors than he's made, which is shocking to notice. We've got 7 major starts and he's missed 4 cuts in those majors, which almost winning the Masters twice helps, keep him in contention or in the conversation. But if I were to pick one, I'd pick Ludvig, just because I think at some point his putter it's a weapon, man. I think I was watching on that Friday round, or maybe one of the rounds he had at the Scottish, where he gained putting on 5 putts, he gained +8 or better, plus 0.8, almost close to a full stroke on a putt 4 or 5 times that round. And he can just go bananas. That's what he did at the Masters. So I think his upside's obviously significantly better. He's got more top 5s than Niemann already in majors, but neither really speak to me. It was just an interesting 2 very popular names that, often go
They're often pitted against each other. Actually, we've talked about this on Slice, and it doesn't. I don't know why they are, but for some reason it's become this kind of like, right? Are you a Ludvig guy? Or are you a Joaquin guy? No.
It's the two handsome youngsters that each tour possesses, with uber talent that really haven't potentially fulfilled that yet. Maybe
Yeah,
the
I guess so.
the
Yeah.
prophecies yet to be written for either of them. Finally, Xander or Tommy? Are we rocking and rolling with Xander Schauffele, who's defending as the Open champion, or are we going with Tommy Fleetwood, who's also looking for his first second place finish in the last couple of years in a major? So,
yeah,
where are we looking over? Yeah, Sam.
I've got to back Tommy, haven't I? I have to back my fellow Englishman and 9 Xander. I really like a lot about Tommy this week. I hate to say it. I think if it comes to the crunch and he's in the mix on Sunday, I'm not sure I can see him winning. But I'd almost go as far as saying I'll be surprised if he's outside the top 10. Like I'm so confident that he'll play well, but yeah, when in terms of winning, I'm not sure. I don't generally back or side with defending champions. So Xander wouldn't get my vote for that reason. That's not to say he's not capable of putting in a decent finish, and he's not quite hit first gear, hasn't he? Sorry, not first gear. He hasn't quite hit top gear since since his injury. So he's been another one that's kind of hard to really confidently predict on any week. I mean, it's going to come together at some point, probably by the end of this year, but it's just not quite there yet.
Yeah, I've been saying with Xander, I don't want to be early on him. And then guess what? I saw him have that ball striking performance on Friday at the Scottish. I was like, this is an invitation and I will cordially accept to the Xander party at 14, 16 to 1, whatever it was. Goes out there, lays a complete dud. Following day, gives me the day I was looking for on Saturday, where if he played like he did on Sunday, on Saturday, it would have been a game changer. Now, has he found that smidgen of form he's looking for? I still just don't trust him yet, Sam, as a T8, as his 2 best finishes this year. Hasn't had a top 5 yet this year. That I need a bit. He hasn't been at the top of the board to handle the nerves, because he used to be very jittery at the top as well. When it came to, he learned how to handle that. He wasn't naturally capable of doing so. We literally saw him at Wells Fargo have one of the implosions of the year, although Rory ran away with it a bit too, and then goes to the PGA and just obliterates the field, and looked unflappable. So does he show up with that kind of feeling, or does he have to relearn that again? It's been a long time since he's been in contention at an Open Championship. That's a totally different thing. Tommy Fleetwood, I was like, wow, Shane Lowry really ran away from the field, didn't they? Then I watched the recap, and he was paired with Tommy Fleetwood in the final group, or were they the final group? Or they were pretty close on the leaderboard.
Myself now.
Either way, Tommy was within striking distance of Shane on Sunday and did the Tommy thing, and then all of a sudden Shane had a 4-shot lead, just after a Tommy double and a Shane birdie or something. So that made a lot more sense to me, is how Shane could have run away from that field with Tommy Fleetwood as the closest contender. It made a lot more sense to me. But funnily enough, Tommy Fleetwood has more major top 5s than Xander Schauffele since 2021 in the 19 starts. Xander's obviously got him completely dismantled in the top 10 and top 20 market. But speaking of, I do want to get your take, Sam, on a Xander Schauffele top 20 is where we're going to be going for here at Play Profit X. I think once the tee times come out, I'm in the mood to kind of dive in on a Xander at plus 106. We can pop any sort of odds that you want in over here to kind of figure out, okay, you can find the odds on a specific sports book that you may not have access to, and you can request them over here. You can also say no to a top 20 as well, which is a little more different than most other places provide. If you were to pick someone, Sam, on the list here to not finish top 20, like to play the devil's advocate, because this is a fun market, because Definitely. Some guys, like for me, I think Fitzy is a solid option to potentially say no, but he's minus 190. So I'd have to find a better number there on Fitz. But if you were to pick a name to not finish top 20, who would you be going with?
I think it'd be Bryson.
Ooh.
I think, for all of his talents, the Open is not, we talked about Scheffler, how maybe the Open is going to be his weakest one. I think you times that by 5 for Bryson. His main asset is not going to be rewarded here, in the same way that it wasn't rewarded at Oakmont. To be fair, it's just he's not one dimensional. He's not just all about bombing it, right? He's got other good things about his game. His short game has been very, very good lately. But I think an Open, again, where you add in all that variance, all those sort of wacky bounces and things like that he's just doesn't really play that often. It makes it quite compelling, I think, to lay him for a top 20.
I couldn't agree more. I will be following your suit there. I'll be popping out once I get off the stream. I can't log in on this when I'm on the stream for some reason. But once we're done, I'll be putting out a Bryson. We might throw a -1, -110 out there. Let the people nibble on that. And if it doesn't get better, I'll throw a -130 out there before the lock of the tournament. But I think he's a great option. I had Justin Thomas in here for a non-top 10, a non-top 20 as well. I might even throw him to miss the cut. I think I've actually put that out there already for JT. Yeah, this is the market I'm in the mood for, but I need to get a better number over there for JT in the miss the cut. I just think it's too obvious right now. I think you can get a +200, +250 easy for JT. So we'll see what he can get up to. But use code FG Degenerates over at Play Profit X. Me and Kenny will be dropping all of our plays along the week. We've got all sorts of fun stuff. You can also get round by round scoring, where all of that stuff is out there for you guys to use to your benefit. Use all my showdown tools that you can to make those decisions over there too. Sam, we sliced the pod in half, but I had an hour of Sam Harrop all to myself, and that will be a memorable show for me for the rest of my life. And it was awesome chatting to you. So be sure to go check out all of Ben Coley's stuff. He should have been on the show, was not. He's probably listening if he has internet. He has a marvelous player breakdown, play-by-player stuff over there on his Twitter feed, and his picks and plays for this week will be going free, I believe, Wednesday afternoon or something like that. But go and support Ben before that. Go log in and subscribe to his stuff, because his stuff is fantastic. One of the premier writers and golf content creators in all of golf, not just across the pond too. And then it goes without saying, the guest on the show with me right now. Tell the people what else is going on in your life as you get on out of here.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I'm trying. I'm still, there probably will still be songs in the future. I'll be honest, I sort of feel like the inspiration is starting to run dry a little bit. I haven't done it for 5 years, but who knows what will happen. Other than that, we're trying to grow the Sliced Golf podcast. So that's kind of been my real focus this year. So, if you haven't listened to it, check that out. That's me and Ben Coley, and it's a weekly show, and we have a few additional ones. We've had some cool guests on, like Ryan Fox was on a couple of weeks ago. He's one that I quite like this week, incidentally. And yeah, other than that, just keeping on really. But yeah, it's been great to be on the show, Byron. I appreciate it. It's been good fun as well. I enjoyed chatting to you. I like the back or nine feature. It's good.
Yeah, as you did with the songs and things, I always try to do things a little differently, and sometimes it ends poorly. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense, so we'll see how it goes, but it is a fun way to kind of dissect the field a little differently than other people do too. As always, friends, use code PORT50 for 50% off at the Model Maniac Patreon, link in the description. Sam, thank you so much for coming on, sir. We'll do it again soon. Within a year, maybe next year we'll do it again. I might have to get Ben on the Scottish and you for this one. We'll see, so that Ben can have 2 cracks at getting on the show again. So we'll see how that goes. But hope you're doing well, Ben. Thank you all for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. This will come out on audio here shortly, and we'll catch you guys next week. Cheers.